Hey guys, this is Ashton
This is Kevin.
And this is Ray.
with Jackalmen Games.
So, guys, we are joined today by the national champion, Drew, also known as Original from Brook Games. So, thank you, Drew, for coming on today.
I mean, I just didn't do a thumbs down there. I meant to point down.
And we are doing this Brady Bunch style, ladies and gentlemen.
He's all the way down. Drew hasn't even said hello yet.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, Drew, big congratulations to you and your team.
Congratulations
For taking home the national championship. So that is the Nova Open we're talking about. And we kind of just wanted to take a look at the deck briefly, but more so get your take on, what it took to become a champion, the things that you did, prior to the event, and then kind of like your play style and, just the mindset that you went into with this event. So I guess let's start off with the deck you took. So it looks like you ran Elite Snoke, Single Die Dr. Aphra, and the Single Die Battle Droid. So it is a support-based deck. And really, I want to know what made you fall onto this deck. And then the second question, I guess, would be how your deck building, style or process goes.
Yeah, so this is definitely a change in style for me, right? I've typically been a guy who's run like middle deck before, mostly 2 characters. This is the first time I've ever taken a villain deck also to a major event. And I landed on this from after watching Nick Cuenca run this at Gen Con. It seemed to me like it was a really good list. I ended up winning the Highlander Store Championship with it also, only with like 5 or 6 reps on it. And sort of how the community reacted to it was like, oh, this deck is good, but also it's like it caught everybody by surprise, and that's why it's good. And I found out that the Golden Dice guys were on something similar as well, and we kind of just collaborated on it. The Golden Dice guys, myself, and then Cody Williams, who came in second place, is also now part of Brook Gaming. And it just wasn't losing, right? We kept hearing like, oh, it loses to Talzin Mando. We found that not to be the case. We made a couple changes from Nick's list that we thought helped that matchup. We heard that it auto won against Mill, which we actually found out not to be the case. So we just basically tested through every change you could make. We tried every support that you could put in place of a pod racer, or I think it was Kylo's ship in the original list. Relentless Pursuit to me was the change that we made to the deck that really put it over the top. If you watch some of the replays on stream, it's just an incredible card that auto wins you some matchups. So it felt smooth to me. It felt like a really good list. And to be honest with you, I had a pretty ridiculous live play winning streak going heading into Nova, and I felt really confident in the list.
Yeah, so it's certainly a tough deck, I would say, to pilot, because I had picked it up several times before, and Kevin actually had the pleasure of playing a Dr. Aphra deck shortly after Nova on one of our videos where he piloted Luke Magnuson's Dr. Aphra Executioner deck. So Kevin, tell me how it felt piloting Dr. Aphra for the first time.
Dr. Aphra can do so many crazy things, and she has her 2 droids on board, and even like Hailfire tank too. It was a lot of fun to get all those combos going off and all that damage dropping down. It's neat.
Yeah. I like I said, I tried it a few times, and I think it certainly takes a skilled player, because you are dealing a decent amount of damage to yourself, so you do have to dance around with the damage. Cards like Dangerous Maneuver, Crash Landing, you are putting damage on yourself or just shifting it around.
Mm-hmm.
Ashton, have you had a chance to play around with any Dr. Aphra?
So I've played against a lot of Dr. Aphra decks. I haven't had a big interest in her. I mean, I know a lot of people appreciate her for what she is, and I appreciate her for her abilities and the triggers that you get with 000 and BT1, but I haven't actually played her myself as far as piloting. I played against it. It is tricky. You have to think a lot about where your damage is being assigned, and there's a lot of triggers. So I've been exploring more into the complex decks, because I think that's kind of how my mind is working with Destiny right now. Is more triggers, more steps, just kind of works with my crazy mind, and I'm seeming to do better with those style decks. So this is something that I want to try out for sure and pilot. It looks super fun, but I have not piloted myself. I've played against it. I have yet to actually play against someone who pilots Aphra effectively, though. I feel like most people that I play against that are piloting Aphra are a little sloppy with the triggers. And this isn't my experience just with playing with Kevin on a recent live stream. This is just other people on TTS.
I'm pretty sloppy at it.
But no, and it's not that. Like, that was a close game. That was a good game. But you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, it's so much to keep track of, and
right.
I don't want to look like an idiot, or I don't want to miss them.
I feel is like the most like auto include for any Aphra deck, and you run red because of what you get with vehicles and supports. Climate, the disruption array, that thing is crazy good. Like, that's a great tech for this deck. So I feel like Aphra has to be played with some character of red to really get some of her abilities. Obviously, you have her being yellow, so you already get the BT1 and the 000, which is basically what you always pair with her. So I mean, to answer that question long-windedly as I normally do, no. The answer is no.
The answer was no. So
I'm not 6 foot tall either, like Drew.
Yeah, Drew's a tall guy.
Notice where his head rests on the chair. So if you're only listening to this in audio, you got to watch the video. That's a tall dude. Forget being intimidated by hyperloops. When you look up and you're like, man, you're with Brook Gaming? Like, that's it. Auto loss. All right.
I don't know. Mike and Nick are pretty tall too. They're not short guys.
I haven't met them in person yet, but
all right, I'm bringing this all the way back.
You got wrangle it, man. Wrangle
it's all yours.
So Drew,
don't let Ashton talk again.
Drew, you said the team. It was kind of a team effort that you did put through the paces. I'm sure, develop your own Brook Gaming gauntlet. How far back did you fall on this deck, and when did you kind of lock in and know that this is what you were going to bring to Nova?
So I actually was considering going to Gen Con. I had some family obligations that were preventing me from going, and I was kind of like looking at a last minute trip, and I was on R2P2, and
hell yes.
I kind of thought that I was going to be on R2P2 through Nova, and I just, full disclosure on that deck, I could not beat Obi Maz. I had this thing where I was like, if I see Obi Maz in a best of 3, I cannot win. If I see it in Swiss, I cannot win. It just felt terrible. And then I started just kind of looking at some of the Snoke lists. And to be honest with you, my initial impression of this list was that, like, yeah, I think it'll be pretty good, but it's fun. I was playing it because it was fun, and I just kept playing it. I was like, no matter what I did, if I was on TTS playing 5 games, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to play an R2P2, and I'm going to play an Obi Maz. And it's like, well, I really want to just play Aphra. And I just really liked playing the deck, and I felt like that's kind of how I got good at it, is because it was fun, and I wanted to keep playing it. So I think my official decision to play this was probably about 2 or 3 weeks before Nova, and the crew that we had involved in testing and everything. That's when we really started to put in a ton of work, where we were putting in several hours a day leading up to Nova, trying to take this event.
So we know that Cody Williams, who took the runner-up of this event, was playing, card for card the exact same list. What were some of the other guys of the team playing?
Yeah, so a few changes, and again, like, so when I refer to Jack, he's a member of the Golden Dice, but I kind of consider him part of like the play testing team. I think that's where he would put himself. Like, we work collaboratively with them to kind of come up with where we were. Jack's list was running a Sebulba's pod instead of the 2 of Pod Racer. It ran 1 of each. And I think he actually cut an Archangel also. And then he was running By Any Means, and he ran 2 Deflects. My brother, also in Brook Gaming, was running 2 backup muscles instead of the Pod Racers, which was interesting. And that was pretty much the main differences between the decks. Somebody might have had a Kylo ship in there somewhere as well.
Yep. These guys above, they know how much. I say above because anyone that's watching this on YouTube can see we're all like in a row, Brady Bunch style. But anyone listening on iTunes or Google Play, sorry, but Kevin and Ashton are above me in this row of I don't know, squares, these little squares.
That's a square. Yes, right. That's a square.
But these guys know that I love R2P2, so
It's like
Yeah.
the trigger word.
Yeah.
it is. I mean, it warms my heart. Me and Drew had several conversations about R2P2 and just how much we love it. And then I was actually going to a store championship like before the set dropped for Way of the Force, which was like really weird and like an awkwardly placed store championship. And I threw up on like, all the discords, one being the Hyperloops Discord, and Mike, and I said I was playing R2P2, and Mike Gem and Nick immediately reached out to me and they're like, let's look at the build, let's go through it, like this is awesome. So I certainly bounced some ideas off of Drew for that, but all right, this is not I mean, this could easily become a podcast about R2P2.
Oh God.
I'm down. I
But so what other decks was there anything else other than R2P2 and this that either yourself or members of your team were looking to bring?
Yeah, so we looked at the Bazine vehicles, the Bazine Snoke First Order Stormtrooper list that a couple of the Hyperloops guys were running. When we put it through testing, we found out that Afra pretty much crushed it, and that's the experience that we had at the event as well. So that was pretty much what solidified us bringing this list. I had a few other things I was trying out. I'm a big fan of Rey Luke also, but I'm always nervous about Kylo showing up. So that was in consideration as well. But I probably had, this was basically after the Highlander Store Championship, which I think maybe that was like August 4th or something like that. Basically, since that date, I've been on this list, and I've just been doing everything I can to refine it. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of refining the list, and just to like give you a little insight into where we debated heavily. Probably the most debated card with the Golden Dice guys was Tech Team versus Chance Cube. I think me and Jack probably had about like 15 hours worth of conversations about which one is better. And I think he landed on Tech Team as well. The reason being that I felt like if you are going to run Chance Cube in this list, you also have to run Friends in Low Places to protect that Chance Cube dice, which I didn't want to do. I thought the list was like, it was too thin to basically make 4 cards for the Chance Cube. So we settled on Tech Team, but you could probably still run it with Chance Cube if you're looking to play around with the list later. But yeah, that's really just some insight into our prep right there. Like, we spent hours debating on cards, like why is Tech Team better, is Chance Cube better? We tried versions without Hailfire Droid Tank and Pod Racers. Like we were all over the place trying to find out like what worked the best. So this deck definitely was not a couple hours of work. Yeah.
I want to say, like, when you're trying to become more competitive and more serious, that is, what you have to do. You have to put in that time. Ashton recently went to a store championship and came runner up to Andrew Cox. So obviously a guy that, knows how to play the game of Star Wars Destiny. But we put in a lot of work with his Talzin Mando deck, and I think that Ashton could express that when you do put in the additional amount of time, it really does pay off, and it helps you better understand not only what you're going to see out in the field if you're doing a lot of playtesting, but understand your deck and why those cards are there. So I think that's awesome. Another thing I wanted to point out was your event list. This was something I had an interview with NJ Cuenca, and I, saw that all of his events were 0 cost. And I see that you kind of followed suit with that, with the exception of Deflect. And I want to know, like, was it freeing or just easy to pilot, knowing that anything that you either drew into with your opening hand or drew into with Afra, you can have the option to play?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And, we tried some 1-cost stuff in here, and Cody and I mostly heavily agreed that it had to be as close to 0 as possible. And it's really just like one of the core concepts of this deck is that you want to win in 3 or 4 turns. And this is an aggro deck, right? This isn't a vehicle deck. It's an aggro deck. So you're trying to end the game by turn 3. And by putting in mitigation for example, if you want to put in flank, which costs 1, which is a perfectly acceptable choice in this deck, that's fine. But by paying 1 to potentially remove 3 damage, right? Like if you're going to remove a 3 side with a flank, you then in turn can't pay for your BT 3 side. So, you know, in most cases, it's more advantageous just to have the 0 cost removal, being able to pay for the additional damage. You know, you could focus your BT from a 1 melee to a 3 melee, or you could resolve the Afro pay side as 4 with a Snoke Bang. Like it typically, when it comes to a damage race, just makes more sense to pay for the damage and use the slightly weaker removal.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely smart. Because it is a deck. Afro does get expensive, and it seems like every time I play and there's a pay side that you can actually roll and hit, it happens. And it's definitely one of those things where, like in my experience playing against it, it really just shuts down the deck if you don't have the resources to pay to resolve BT1 or Afro or whatever the case may be. So I mean, yeah, I mean that's definitely smart to do that. And like you said, the weaker removal, even though it is weaker removal, like it's still good. And the probes are just auto include. I feel like probes are just amazing to run, and that's definitely going to help, because with friends in low, you don't get friends in low, but you get probe. And friends in low lets you look at the hand, but probe I think is actually more effective in a sense, especially with the fact that you get to look at 2 random cards, don't get to look at the whole hand. But if they're events, which we're experiencing decks with a lot of event cards now, everything's really heavy in events, you can a lot of times remove both those cards and keep your dice safe, you know.
Yeah, Probe is just a great card, right? Like, there's no matchup it's bad in, and there's certain matchups, like, for example, Obi-Wan or Kylo Snoke, where it's essential. But, you know, one of the things that we heard from Nick was that you could draw into some bad opening hands. And I went back and watched his games from Gen Con a couple times just to see what went wrong for him against the in the Talzin Mando matchup. And the first thing that I noticed in game 1 is that his opening action was to play Friends in Low Places, and it ended up being just a dead card. And I kind of thought that, like, I love Friends in Low Places, but you're number one, you don't really need to protect any of your dice in this deck. Like, there's nothing where if it gets removed, you throw your hands in the air and walk out of the room.
Right.
So I kind of thought in that situation, like, if there were a deflect in that opening hand, Afro lives for an additional turn. And there's just like Friends in Low just didn't feel good to me. And it feels like there's a lot of situations where it potentially jams up your draws, which we were trying to avoid. Our whole thing, our whole, again, back to like our core concepts that I talked about earlier, we wanted as little variance as possible. And I felt like Friends didn't do anything towards reducing variance, whereas cards like Deflect and Relentless Pursuit did.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Obviously you guys put in a lot of work, but the thing that Kevin was talking about right before we started to record was the amount of time that you were sitting down playing Star Wars Destiny through the 2-day event. Kevin, that is like the first thing he says whenever we have a guest on. It's like, man, how was it playing all that Destiny?
All that Destiny.
So I want to know,
I
like,
don't have the attention span for 10 hours, or even a Sword Champion, as you can see, Drew. I walked out before that Sword Championship was done. I saw it on Facebook that you won. I'm sorry, man.
That's all right. That's cool.
It was a rainy day. It was so rainy.
Oh man, the whole place flooded in the final. I was playing the final and like water coming in the back wall. It was brutal.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was so bad.
Yeah, that was like an epic flood. That was crazy.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, like a whole town in Brick County in New Jersey got washed away. So
well, Kevin brought me there. I had been there once, and it's like at the bottom of a hill. No wonder that place floods.
Bhutan's is a floodplain, most likely.
Yeah, it looks like San Francisco. Like everything's going downhill. Like and then the shop is just sitting right there.
It's a great shop though. I love that place so much.
That's it, man. It's got the world champion and it's got the national champion that plays there. So if you're looking to get better at Destiny, you should be playing at Highlander. That's for sure.
That's me.
No, it was a great place. Like me and Kevin had a lot of fun. That upstairs, pretty nice with all the furnish, like wood.
Yep.
Yeah,
So here's one thing that I think a lot of listeners are interested in, and one thing that I'm interested in. And I know it may take a little bit of time to go through it, and don't feel like you have to go in extreme detail, but I would really like to go through your rounds and find out like how the matchups went, if you won by a mile or if it was a close game. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of running through your rounds real quick, I would love to kind of hear how those matchups went and how quick the games were versus how slow the games were and how close.
Can I say one thing before he starts?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say round 1 was probably his toughest match.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
I mean, what does BYE stand for? What character pairing is that?
That was rough. That was a rough one. I think I had a cup of coffee with Edwin upstairs and was kind of like getting mentally focused for the event.
That was Bazine Yoda Executioner. That's what that build was.
Got it.
Oh yeah.
Gary combo.
The villain hero mix up.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail that, but
yeah. So I'll go through this quickly because you could spend 2 hours on this alone.
Exactly.
But yes,
faster's better.
So like round 1, Snoke 2X Executioner. I had never played that list before, so it was my first time playing it. And I think I just got like a ridiculous setup. Like I got like the 000 BT1 turn 1, and I think I got like 8 damage off of that on the Snoke. Like I think maybe he like misassigned some indirect and basically let me have Snoke. So I think I killed Snoke like second action on turn 2. And that was like one of my less competitive games of the day. But I think the guy who's piloting it finished like 5-3 and made like he like did work from there. He did really good after like unfortunate round 2 for him. Round 3 was the mirror match, and to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of skill in the mirror. It's draw bubble shield and ping only for damage. So I think there's like a moment on the stream where one of the Chance Cube guys is like, why is he not pinging for the discard here? Why is he not pinging for the discard? And I'm like listening to it. I'm like, because if I'm pinging for the discard, I'm just going to get out ramped in damage and lose. Like you have to only ping for damage in the mirror. So yeah, that was a really close game. Then I lost to Luke from Destiny Council playing Afra double executioners. This was probably in my opinion, the match I played the worst in the entire tournament. Reviewing the game on stream after, I made a bunch of misplays. I had never played on Docking Bay before. In all my prep, I never tried Docking Bay one time. And he used it to maximum advantage, and I botched my claims horribly. So, so that was my first loss and only loss to Swiss. Then we went on lunch break, and like I have this in one of my articles somewhere, but you're sitting there and you're like, well, I'm 3-1. That's pretty good, but it's not as good as 4-0. And then you're thinking like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I can go 3-5. I could get paired up. And I walk in and I get paired up to play Jackalmen, who is 4-0, which is you're just basically like, can you make this day any harder on me right now?
Right.
So fortunately, I had play tested with him a little bit the day before. I felt okay about the matchup. He helped me make a change to my deck. I pulled the Sebulba's pod for the second pod racer, which was definitely correct. I managed to take that game. Next round, I got Taxter playing Kylo Snoke, which was the first time I had seen that deck at the tournament. I had heard what it did. Pretty sure he drew like a really bad opening hand. Like he's looking for holocrons and 4 speeds, and I think he basically drew nothing. And I think I just basically outramped him and crushed him. Round 7, I played Dan Rudkowski, who's another Highlander guy, playing Obi Maz, which I had practiced for extensively. Dan, I got to tell this story because this is one of my rage quit notice. Go ahead, sorry.
I know. I played tested with him the day before he left. He was talking about it. He was so hyped playing Obi Maz, and he's a good Obi Maz player.
Yeah. So you want to hear an even crazier story? My mother actually taught Dan in elementary school. So so he was like, oh, I went to East Brunswick when we were at Highlander, and I was like, oh, did you cross school? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, do you know Mrs. Warren? He was like, yeah, that's who I had in 3rd grade. I'm like, yeah, it's my mom.
Way to go.
Totally crazy stuff. So that was my first experience with Dan. But so yeah, this game for me, his opening play was he played Vibro Knife, so he had no resources, and then rolls out base 3, +2, and I have no removal. And I'm just like, well, I should probably just scoop, but managed to bring it back. I think I had 1 hit point left on Afra. in this game. Probably my closest game of the tournament. And then got paired with a mill player where he didn't see Anakin's pod, and when you don't see Anakin's pod with that deck, it can be rough against mine. So yeah, that was the end of day one. Finished 7-1 second place. So I was pretty happy. Can't really expect more than that.
So one thing I wanted to ask about is I've been doing a lot of playtesting against Kevin, specifically with the Yoda Cassian Anakin, and I just wanted to know, like, it seems like obviously you had pretty good success against it, and overall it wasn't as dominant as it was in both Gen Con and even the UK Nationals, putting 4 into the top 16. How does this deck match up against it? What makes it such a favorable matchup for yourself? Is it just good piloting on your end, or is there something that is inherently pushes the advantage to this deck?
Yeah, I don't think Afro Snoke Droid has a favorable matchup. I think it's like a true 50-50. I will say, though, there's a specific strategy with Yoda, Cassian, Anakin that you need to be taking, which is that you need to take every shield the entire game. So Pod Racer is never a discard. You're always focusing it to a 2-shield side. And Yoda, you are always taking a shield over milling. And that's the way you win. And I don't think I had anybody that played that way throughout the day. Now, if you run into somebody like Andrew Cox, Reflex, who won, or Sir Dappy, who's one of the other loopers who's tremendous on this deck, they're going to know to do that. And it's a much more difficult matchup when that's the case.
Yeah, because it seems like, those small indirects, they could just eat them up with shields.
Yeah, the mill deck needs to be taking every shield that it has access to, and it becomes a completely different matchup. Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah. So that Afra Executioner deck, can you speak a little bit more about that? Because I thought that was an extremely wild build by the Destiny Council, and piloting that was Luke Magnuson. You did take the L on that round 4. You said it was probably the least best you played, or you felt like you didn't play very well. Like Kevin's laughing at me for least.
There you go. You got it. You got it.
But I wrote an article where I actually said that was my favorite game of the day, just because it was kind of a real back and forth. I remember, specifically to gain the advantage, you got the Hailfires out very quickly, and the rolls just didn't work for you towards the end. But what surprised you about that deck?
Yeah, so number one, the sequencing with that deck is a little bit different. Like it wants to get a kill with the supports to roll in the executioners and then activate the executioners a second time. Like it's getting, typically what I've seen with executioner decks before is the executioners are getting their own kills. So I think you're getting added value out of the fact that like you don't have to use an executioner dice to get a reset onto the executioner. Like you can use a BT or a 000 or a Hailfire Droid dice, which is really an interesting change. And I hadn't seen that before. So like I kind of expected him to be sequencing like somebody who's playing Snoke Executioners, for example, or Snoke Executioner, whatever. Like I'd seen a couple variants of that before. So that threw me for a loop. I definitely just made some mistakes in this game. Like I had a situation where I resolved a 2 indirect side, but by resolving the 2 indirect side, it enabled him to claim and get a bubble shield, which saved him 3 indirect. So I just like literally just punted away a damage right there, and in a 2 damage game, that's a huge deal. And then I think I made a mistake late game too, where I probably improperly sequenced my last turn. Like I should have activated BT before I dropped my second Hailfire, because the damage from hand would have been lethal, and it might have possibly like altered his action, not knowing that depending on what BT rolled. Also took a Pod Racer to deal 1 indirect instead of taking a bubble shield when I claimed. So there's like it's the guys from ABG are laughing at me because we were out to dinner after. They were all sitting there 7-1, like staring at Twitch, just like, okay, like I made this mistake. Like I could have done this better. And like out of the blue, I'm just like, I'm so bad. Like, I can't believe I did this. And they're like, what are you doing? You're 7-1. You're in second place. Like, what are you mad about? I'm like, I punted this game against Magnuson. That's what I'm mad about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't
How
know.
could
It
you?
was-
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's how they were treating it as well.
I will say, like, playing Star Wars Destiny, I think, like, the small decisions that need to be made, like, for instance, there was a period of time when I played where I didn't want to win the roll-off at times because making the choice of whose battlefield to go on, like, it was like too much for me. I always thought I would make the wrong choice or give them too much of an advantage, or where the shield's really worth it. But when you're, like you were saying before, when you're unfamiliar with the battlefield, or just the mechanics of how it plays with your deck, or with your opponent's deck. I mean, everyone can look at the claim abilities and kind of formulate, all right, I understand, but that is a whole nother dynamic that I don't think people really dive into on um, articles or podcasts, that when you're presented with a different battlefield and you kind of have to sequence things a little bit differently, that can be a challenge.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That was one of Ray's articles, I think, that you wrote in the beginning, right? Like when to claim the battlefield, and that was something that was on Ray's mind for a while, and that's definitely something to really think about. Like, there's a lot of things that are not obvious in this game that are super important. And that's one thing that I want to try to start introducing more, and even our content, is opening hands, what to mulligan, what to keep, and focusing more on the battlefield. Because like you were saying, Drew, is that when people are playing the Yoda, Cassian, Anakin deck, they're not thinking about the shields. They're not thinking of shields as mitigation. They're not thinking of shields as making the game last a little longer so they can use that in their advantage. They're just trying to mill the decks to mill, and that's kind of one of those things. Like, for you, Drew, like when you're building a character pairing, or when you're like, hey, I'm gonna put time into this deck, what are those like tell signs that reveal itself as this is a good deck? Like, how do you begin that process, or what is like some of the regulations or rules that you put in place to help narrow through all the possible combinations when you're starting to really dive into a character pairing?
Yeah, so the most important for me is, am I deck? Like, I feel like I can. If I'm 4-1 or better, like, I feel like I'm pretty good on this deck. I want something where the engine meshes perfectly with the cards in the deck. Like, I don't want to have to be. You're obviously thinking about resources, but I don't want to have to be like overly concerned about where are my resources coming from. That's always important to me. And the big thing is this deck going to be good in this meta, and is this deck winning games for me? I like to play a lot by feel. Like, I play a lot by, like, is the deck smooth? Like, to me, this deck just felt smooth when I picked it up, and that's just like the decks that I've played in the past that I really liked. Yeah. I took Yoda Hondo to Worlds. I won a regional with R2P2. They just felt smooth to me. Like, it just flowed properly, and this deck to me just had the perfect flow to it, which is one of the things obviously I want to see when I'm picking up a deck for a major tournament.
Yeah.
Do you feel that like fast decks in this meta are just an auto lose? Like, do you feel like if decks play out too fast that they just don't have an advantage right now? Because with the character spread and a lot of the mid and late game decks that are out now, I feel like playing decks like Boba Phasma just is never going to have a place. It just plays too fast.
So I'm just going to answer that with no. And the reason I'm going to say that is because of how good I think Obi Maz is right now, which isn't probably the fastest deck in this meta. I would say fast decks are fine. I think a fast deck could win a major tournament. I think they're just slightly higher variance, and a card like Probe can potentially just crush a fast deck. Like, that's what happens with Obi Maz in this matchup, is that, like, if they're going to hyperspace jump and you're able to probe a hyperspace jump, that's it. Like, you're just going to sit there and you're not going to be able to do anything with like 5 supports in the pool, and you're going to lose. So I feel like I've always kind of felt that fast decks were like razor edge decks, but it's even more of that extreme right now, where if one thing goes wrong for you, you're in deep trouble. But I still think they're good. I think a fast deck is. I personally wouldn't take one, but if that's your style, it's not to say that you couldn't win something with a fast deck right now.
There's always something to be said about having dice that don't get tampered with by your opponent. I mean, getting able to put them out and resolve them has a lot of merit in my opinion.
That's why running interference is still good with Obi-Maz, is because like you can really shut down mitigation, you can really shut down, you know, the things that's going to keep your dice from popping away, so you can keep that major damage out. And I mean, Obi-Maz, I feel like is like the only like real fast deck that's still playable right now. I feel like everything else kind of fizzled out. And I like fast decks. I mean, I'm more of like a mid-range person is what I like to play. Even maybe some of these like longer late game decks, but you know, everyone likes, like, I'm thinking about like these new players that like get in this game and they like to do, everyone likes to do quick bursts of damage. You know, they like to feel, oh man, this is great, I'm so powerful, like I almost like one-shotted this character and that's great. But I just feel like now it's like if you play too quick, it's like the moment you have nothing to do or little cards at hand, you can very easily get those cards out, or you can very easily play around that. But I feel like Obi-Maz is like the only thing that's really fast and effective.
Yeah, so I feel like Obi-Maz is pretty good. I think Yoda, Cassian, Aggro is pretty good. And I wouldn't really call it a fast deck, but Kylo Price plays pretty fast too. It's like on the faster side where it's where you need to be like constantly thinking about being able to claim to prevent Price from flipping a dice to, making it a 3. So there's definitely some good fast stuff. I mean, all the mono blue decks that I played on day 2, they were all running 4 speed. So they were looking to action sheet and go a little bit quicker as well. So that's, there were some, I wouldn't call them fast decks, but I would call them faster than your typical middle.
Okay, got it. Yeah, Kylo Price just doesn't like me. Like I can do it good with it sometimes, but it's like so many people are like so prepared to play around it now. It's a lot of people are running tech against me, and that's more of like my local meta really, because that's kind of what I just one of my go-to decks that I have built on the side. Did you see a lot of Kylo Price there? Like, what do you think you saw the most of?
I think I only know of 2 people that I talked to that brought Kylo Price, and that was Dave from Brook Gaming, who finished in 4th, top 4 with Kylo Price. So that was the most notable finish. And then I know Isaac, who plays at Highlander, the Wonder Kid. He was running it as well. I think he finished either 5 or 3 or 4.
Crushed me.
He crushed
me.
Yeah, he's
so good.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's like under 13 murderer. He's so good.
Yeah.
Does he keep track of his health with a tape measure? Ray, who is that? Ray, who is that guy that we saw?
What?
That's rough.
It was just like some crazy story.
It wasn't Isaac though. He didn't do that.
Player that.
Yeah.
What I don't know what made you think of that.
just what he called him. And I promise you, I'm gonna carry tape measures to carry. My character's at 12 health, and it's just gonna
just little tiny mini ones.
Yep, you got it.
Oh my gosh.
That was the most ridiculous thing I've seen.
Take us through your top cuts.
Top cuts, okay. So it's talked about Yoda, Cassian, Anakin, 1-2-0. That was just like, I'm going to tell you about my prep too, because I felt like this was actually important for day 2. Is a lot of people, like, you knew the matchups ahead of time, like you knew what you were going to play, and a lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to go grind, and I made the decision to just go out and have fun, where I was like, I'm going to make myself miserable grinding 10 more games tonight against Mill. I'm not going to learn anything, and I'm probably going to lose and just have like no confidence. So I made the decision to take 0 reps against that, other than the game I had the prior day and my prep in the previous weeks. And it worked out great because I sat down and I was like, all right, I can play 3 games against Mill. And then fortunately, I didn't have to see it again for the rest of the tournament because it's just not an enjoyable experience for me. But I opened every game in like spectacular fashion, where it was like turn 1, 000 tech team, turn 2, like double climate sensor array. And I was just like 3 damage, 2 damage. Like it was, it was just too much for the guy to deal with the board that I was able to get. But he did everything he could. He was vandalizing the correct supports. He was playing Flames of the Past when he could, but it just it wasn't enough. I felt like I just got too far ahead of him on turn 1 and turn 2 of pretty much every game. So another fun story. Round of 16 or round of 32, when I was playing my opponent, I saw Rick from Knights of Ren. He was like sitting next to me, and when they did the pairings on that day, somebody had actually dropped. So like, I don't know, I'm going to say like 8 people on each day got repaired. I wasn't one of them, so my matchup didn't change, but he got repaired to play Taxter. so I was just like, man, like the repairings went really well for you, huh, Rick? Just like jokingly, and like not knowing that because of the repairing, I was playing the winner of that game. So round of 16, I then got to play Taxter.
Cool.
Also had the luckiest moment of this series of my day in this series. He ran me over in game 1, completely destroyed me. Game 2, I was very far ahead, but I think he had 6 resources with 4 cards in hand. He actually opened his turn by discarding Force Lightning, so I was immediately like, okay, he's trying to play Rise Again, I'm going to probe. And I said to him, and I was like, yeah, I guess if I get this, I win, huh? And he was like, yeah, I think so. So I flip over 2 cards, and I get 2 Rise Agains, like not even considering that he could have 2 of them in his hand. So that was definitely my luckiest. That was definitely my luckiest moment of the entire tournament. I think I still had the game 1, even if he got one of them off. But after that, I was like, I got a little out of line. I was like, yes, I got it. And then I was just like, all right, I got to reel it in. Like, it can't be like yelling like, hey, I just beat him, you know?
Right.
And then that kind of shifted the whole series. After that, I took game 2, and then game 3, I got a ridiculous ramp in game 1. He opened the game with Abandon All Hope in game 3, and I finished turn 1 with Tech Team 000 Hailfire Droid Tank, just to give you an idea of how good that game went for me.
Yeah, that's just Snoke for you.
Yep.
Like,
yeah. It was pretty disgusting. So after that, I got to play Agent of Zion in the round of 8. Another back and forth. He opened, I think, every game with Abandon, but fortunately I had seen it by that point and kind of had like a strategy against it. Back and forth series. I haven't said this in previous like podcasts, I guess, but I guess I can say it now because he put the article out. Round 1 of game 3, he forgot his Kylo activation. So there's 2 damage in limbo for the rest of time now, and the game came down to me having 2 health left on Snoke. Yeah, so I got a little lucky and unlucky simultaneously here. I had 3 dice left in the pool he had 3 health on Kylo. I had a Snoke dice, a Hailfire tank, and Slave 1 with no resources. So I re-rolled 2 times and hit all blanks, and then re-rolled the 3rd time. I think I would have had 1 card left in my deck and had to face a Kylo activation, which basically means you lose, and then rolled into 4 indirect to win. So,
did you notice it at the moment it happened, or was it something you look back on?
I noticed it probably like the next turn after he went, and then he noticed it the turn after that. So it was like my turn. I took an action. He took an action, and then I was like, oh, he forgot his Kylo activation. And I think the reason he forgot it is because he had a chance cube on Kylo, and he was thinking about paying for the chance cube. Mm-hmm. And then like after that, like the turn after that, when it's his turn again, he was just like, I just realized it, and I was like, oh, what'd you just realize? Like I had kind of known at that point. And he was like, I forgot the Kylo activation, and I was like, oh yeah, it's too late for that now. But
that's rough. It's just like brain backlog.
Yeah, and I have to tell you too, like I don't know how he was. Like I have to tell you too, this fun series I had of the day. Like I had heard that Agent of Zion was like he liked to table talk a little bit, but he was just like a really fun guy. Like by table talk, he just like wanted to have a fun conversation. I guess like I don't think he was really trying to like gain an edge or anything, but it was like I had a very enjoyable time playing against him. The first time I ever met him in person. So we had a super competitive series, and it was kind of, I guess, lucky and unlucky. It was, that's stuff like that has to happen to win a tournament like this, and that was another one of my moments.
All right, I'm going to set this up though, because your next match is one of my favorite players in Star Wars Destiny, and this was probably my favorite deck that was at Nova, just because he was doing what no one else thought could be done. And go ahead, Drew.
Yep. So round of 4, Nick Cuenca from the Hyperloops. Big fan of his, big supporter of the guys at the Hyperloops. They've definitely done a lot for Brook Gaming over the past couple months, so nothing but respect. Nick obviously built the prototype or built the first version of the deck that I was playing, so I definitely felt that was to his advantage. I had 1 rep ever against Dooku Talzin, and I'm sure it looked nothing like the deck that he was playing. But one of the things that I knew about my deck is that I did not lose to 2 wide. That was my whole thing going in. If I see any 2 wide deck, I'm going to beat it. The only one I was mildly concerned about was Obi Maz, so I felt fine sitting down. I was just kind of like, I have a rough idea of what's going to be in here. It's going to be a lot of cost 1 stuff. It's going to be some Force Waves. Probably have an Ancient or 2. Might have Force Speed. So I was like, I kind of had an idea what to look for. Obviously, we got to see the deck lists too, so that helped. And my deck just did what it did, which is it just piles on indirect, and if you don't have a health pool that can deal with it, you're in trouble. So that's kind of how the series went. Nick played great. He did everything he could. It took game 2, but game 3, this one's on Steam too, or on stream too, on Twitch, if you want to go back and watch it. I think I got the turn 1 000 BT Archangel start, and it's just like there's no grosser start for this deck. I think I also dealt 11 damage while getting that start, so it was just like pretty unbelievable.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness.
Yeah. So that was that. And then the finals is playing against Cody Williams, who again I drove to the event with, built the deck together with. We mirrored each other's performance the entire way. Both finished 7-1 day 1. Both finished in second place. Had the exact same record in the exact same rounds, and it basically is this. The exact mirror is a dice rolling contest, and whoever drops Bubble Shield first. So I was I kind of felt like we had already won at that point, and we were just playing like a little bit of a home game.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Lap.
Yeah, it wasn't too serious. So I'm kind of like unhappy that we couldn't both win, but like there has to be a winner and there has to be somebody in second place. But
Right.
Look at Drew. Drew is probably like, "Hey, guy, like, let's just take this one for don't take it too serious." And inside, Drew's like, "I'm gonna crush this guy."
no,
No. Cody, relax, man. It's just me and you.
yeah, no, and I got to shout out Cody too, because like me and him put so much work into this together. It was awesome that it finished the way that it did. But Cody Williams, he's Man 10 on TTS. I think he's like probably one of the top 5 players in the United States, and he hasn't really gotten this is the first time he was ever able to go to a national event. So you're definitely going to be hearing more of him, but he's an incredible player. Like I never have every game I have with him is a challenge. He has very high level thoughts on the game. So if you don't know him, it's worth trying to talk to him at events and pick his brain, because he really is a great player, and he earned the finish in this event.
See, you should have switched decks. You should be like, all right, we're playing the same decks. All right, we're all shuffled up, and then you just switch.
That's the most outrageous thing ever.
That's it, man.
That's what we're doing, Ray or Kevin.
Isn't there
the
like
same
a
deck,
judge sitting right there?
we're like, look,
Do you think
just
the
switch.
judge would let that
It's
go
the
by?
same deck. You just change sleeves.
Nah.
We talked about scooping and playing it in Jersey, but we didn't.
Oh, that would be amazing. Just like
take you home.
just look at the judges and just stand there, make your move, man. Who wins? Like, just
Yeah. So there's
ridiculous.
again, if you watch, and I'm going to shout out Chance Cube too, because they paid a lot of money to stream for everybody. So you should definitely go watch their stuff so they can try to make some of that money back. But there was a 20-minute break where people were like, "Oh, did they scoop? Is it over?" But we were actually trying to find the guys from FFG who were downstairs at the FFG booth, because they didn't put anything about Worlds invites or Worlds buys in the prize kit. So we were trying to figure out all right, what are we playing for here? We wanted to know, are we playing for Worlds buys? Do we both have World seats? Are we playing for a World seat? What is it? So we were actually running around the event trying to figure out what the top 2 prizes before we started playing.
so outrageous.
That's cool.
Only Star Wars Destiny.
Yeah. What are we here for again, guys? I put in 10 hours of Destiny, but why am I doing this?
2 days too.
Am I doing this just to be on Jackalmen Games Let's Talk, or am I getting a buy or a seat at Worlds?
It's like a scavenger hunt.
And then the FFG's talking about it. I don't know, man. What should we do? Should we give them a? They don't even know. They don't even know.
I just envision Cody and Drew just running up to these guys at a booth, and then be like, yeah, and exactly what do we get them, man? I don't know. Yeah, World seats. That sounds good.
Yeah,
all right.
exactly.
Did you
luck,
actually
guys.
win a seat at Worlds?
Yeah. So they told us, and this is where we're having some issues with FFG right now. They told us that we both got Worlds invites and buys, but no paid trips. And the website says that only first place gets a buy. So we're kind of trying to fight to get Cody that buy that we were told that he got at the event. That's where we're at with it right now.
So you get paid trips to Worlds, or you do not get a paid trip to Worlds?
No, but again, I'm not sure. I love FFG, and I'm not. If you win the German national, freaking $5,000 paid trip. But if you win the U.S. nationals, you don't get a paid trip. It's ridiculous.
You got to get there your own.
Yeah. No, I gotta take my horse and buggy out to Michigan now.
Yeah.
You're going to get. Yeah, they're
You gotta move to Germany and then become a full-time Star Wars Destiny player.
There you go. There you go.
That's the only
German
way.
people. It's because everyone's scared of them. That's what it is.
Yeah,
You're
we'll
going
give you whatever
to
you
give
want.
me $5,000.
That's not German. That's Russian, man.
Same thing. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's not.
All right, I'm ending this train wreck. Drew, thank you so much for coming on today. You know, I've been a huge supporter, as well as Kevin and Ashton, of Jackalmen Games, of Brook Games. We've really just like knew that you guys were the up and coming, you know, powerhouses in the game. Like I said, I wrote an article that highlighted that. I was on another podcast. Shout out to Kevin and Corwin of Roll On.
Not me.
And we basically just talked you guys up like crazy because the things that you guys are doing, the waves that you're making in the Star Wars Destiny community, it's certainly noticed by everybody. And I'd like to say, you know, I was telling Drew, I'm like a scout. I'm like a talent scout, and I kept telling him, man, like, you guys are awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. It'll all pay off. So
Then why are you hanging with me, man?
I don't know, dude.
Because you have this
when I
wonderful
move
balloon
when I move
floating in
back
the
to
background.
Jersey, you're done.
Okay.
I definitely,
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate the support from you guys. I heard the a couple of shout outs that you gave us on your podcast the other day too. So definitely appreciate all the kind words from everybody. Just kind of want to throw out there too. A lot of hard work to win this one. This wasn't just like a go there and roll hot. We put a lot into it, and that's what it's going to take to compete with these top teams. Like the Hyperloops have basically dominated everything for the past couple events, and we're on really good terms with them. And we're friendly. We're in their Discord and everything. But like, we want to make it hard for them. We don't want it to be. We don't want them to be able to just win every event. So I feel like we took a step towards that with this one, and we're going to keep working hard, and we're going to make them work hard if they want to stay on top.
Yeah.
It's got to be like the Yankees Red Sox. You got that rivalry going on now, Jersey and Massachusetts, right?
I hope so, man. I hope we can be the Yankees. I'll be satisfied. 2 World Series in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's also really neat that you're in my local meta. I get to see you like next week if you're gonna be coming. Oh my goodness, word salad. Oh my goodness, it's gonna be awesome to see you.
Word salad.
Word salad. You never heard that?
Third dumbest thing I've heard of this podcast.
Well, you know
All right,
what?
guys.
At least I will do my least job ever.
But yeah,
There
Drew,
you
you're
go.
awesome, man. Thanks for your time, and I'm sure that you've been hit up by a lot of people, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with the Jackalmen, and we can soak up some of this knowledge and deliver this out to the community in a way that people can enjoy it. And thanks for getting through our shenanigans, and you've just been really patient with us, and I really appreciate that. I do.
Yep, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
I'm telling you, Arabra Gaming, $45 a month. You can sign up to become a student of Drew and Paul.
That's right.
Drew
There
Sensei.
you go. Now you have to start it.
Yeah. Now you're forced.
$5 a month Patreon. That's what we're doing right now.
There you go.
We'll see if that changes.
I'm
now
doing
you got a
I'm
title.
doing the $45 tier for free exclusive training.
There you go.
But all right, thank you so much, Drew. Kevin, Ashton, I'm hopefully not inviting you to the next one of these, but
Oh, come on.
Oh,
all right,
look
take
at
care,
that.
everybody.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Love you all.
Do you like talking about Star Wars Destiny? Then join the Jackalmen Games Discord. Hit the link below and join today.